When your child is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, everything changes in an instant. One moment, you're just a parent, packing lunches, helping with homework, worrying about bedtime routines, and the next, you're thrust into a world of blood sugar numbers, insulin doses, carb counting, and constant vigilance. There's no training period, no gradual onboarding. You're expected to learn fast, adapt faster, and somehow stay steady for the child who's looking to you for reassurance.
In this episode, we're talking about the invisible transformation that happens to parents in that moment and in all the days that follow. The skills that you never planned to have but suddenly can't live without. The way you become part nurse, part scientist, part advocate, part mathematician, all while still being mom or dad. Because parenting a child with type 1 diabetes isn't just about managing a condition. It's about becoming someone new almost overnight. And if you're in that world, you already know the learning never really stops.
Welcome to Raising Type 1, a podcast for parents navigating life with type 1 diabetes.
Honest conversations, shared experiences, and reminders that you don't have to do this alone. What do you feel like your first, this is not normal parent life anymore moment was after Paxton was diagnosed?
I don't know. I feel like part of me wants to say, like, obviously all of the education and stuff that they hit you with in the hospital.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much a wake-up call. I think it's easier to kind of, like, brush that off, though, because you are, like, in shock and your adrenaline is kind of through the roof and you're just doing what you need to do to like get through that hospital stay and like get home. So if I wasn't going to say like all of the education and the, you know what I mean, facts and care that they throw at you at the hospital, I would probably say, I think I talked about this on another episode too, but our trip home from the hospital where I was like scared to death because Paxton wouldn't wake up.
Yeah.
And I thought that I was going to have to break out the emergency glucagon. And I think that was probably like the first like, oh shit moment, like this is potentially like what the rest of our life looks like.
Yeah. I do remember you talking about that story.
Yeah.
And that seems like probably exactly what your moment was.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what mine would be. I think mine would probably be like, I feel the same way as you, that my first instinct is to say hospital stuff and like all the education that you get there. But second to that, I would say when Wes, my husband, went back to work, and I realized that I had to figure out how to give Wells injections by myself without him there. Like, okay, I need to figure out how to like hold his body and hold whatever body part I'm injecting into still. He had just turned 3. That was wiggly. But learning how to do all of that without Wes, it very much feels like you have a newborn and like you're just fresh out of the hospital having a newborn. Like I would compare the two feelings very similarly, but obviously with type 1 diabetes, like it's your new normal and it's not going to go away in the same way that like a newborn grows up, and some of the newness of having a newborn automatically goes away because they grow up. Type 1 diabetes is forever, and yeah, you learn and like grow into it, but I think that was the moment, like giving him that first injection without Wes there and being like, okay, this is not ever going to go back to how it was before.
Yeah, it's like the wake up call.
Yeah, exactly. I do think though, like the hospital education is probably worth mentioning because I did feel a little bit of shell shock, maybe isn't the right word, in the hospital, but like, whoa.
I think you don't think about like, yeah, like they come in, they tell you your kid has type 1 and you have like the most basic level of understanding during that hospital stay. And then they throw all of the education at you, which may or may not be accurate, but that's
saying
that's a different beast. But you kind of just like, you sit there during the education and you're like, oh fuck, like I didn't realize that this was going to change, or I didn't even think about this, or oh gosh, like what are we going to do about this? Like how are we going to work this into our everyday lives? Like,
yeah.
And I think that truly is such a shell shock and it is overwhelming, but you don't, and you can't let yourself feel all of that in that moment.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hit you until later. And like now us looking back on it, however many years later, we're like, oh yeah.
I remember when we were in the hospital and we got moved up to the floor, like the children's floor, and it took us a little bit because they didn't have a room for us. We went in at night at like 7 p.m. and we stayed the whole night, overnight in the ER because they didn't have a room for us on the floor yet. And then the next morning at like 10 a.m. we got moved up to the floor. And so we had like not 24 hours, but a little over 12 hours of just being in the hospital, but not near the education stuff yet. And they had like only given him a Lantus shot in the middle of the night. Like that was the only, and he was getting fluids. That was the only thing they had done at that point. And we got up to the education floor, or to the floor to start our education, and they put the equations for his carb ratios and correction factor on the board, like on the white, the like hospital whiteboard. Yeah. And I remember taking a picture of that and looking at it and being like, oh my God, like I have to do this math now multiple times a day, every single day. I'm terrible at math. Like math is my weakest subject. And now this is a part of my like everyday parenting for this child. So I don't know that I was like emotionally digesting that, but it was definitely a moment that I was like, oh wow, like
it's still like a light bulb moment. Yes. Where it's like this realization that you have, whether or not there's emotion attached to it. It's kind of just like an oh shit moment kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like there's anything you do now in your day-to-day life that would have completely confused pre-diagnosis Janelle? I can think of several things.
I was going to say, I think the list of things that don't make that list is a lot shorter. Yeah. Oh gosh. If we had to narrow some down, obviously math, like, yeah, sure. Like we're big, like DIY people. So like, yes, like we use math and like projects around the house and like obviously basic math and shit like that. But just like the constant math and calculations and like, yes, I'm so grateful we have a pump that helps us out with that. But even just like on top of the numbers, like data analysis. I ain't got fucking time for that, but now I have to have time for that.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think, and honestly, that took me a while to even realize after diagnosis too, because when Wells was diagnosed, I was very much like playing by the rule book of the endocrinologist. Like we were kind of going to the diabetic educators for everything. That's totally fine if that's what people choose to do. Yeah, is what we were doing, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I had a conversation. I know I've brought her up before. Her name is Lydia. And we had a conversation about literally how, like, with type 1 diabetes, you have to become a data analyst and analyze the data, analyze the trends to, like, if you want good management, if you want good control, that's what you must do.
Tis what you must do.
Yeah. And it definitely shifted the way I think about control and diabetes and looking at numbers and trends. And I do feel like I spend about 90% of every day in data analyst mode.
Yeah.
And always watching for trends, always watching for, shifts. But right now we're dealing with a big shift in Wells' insulin needs. I would assume it's like warmer weather. I don't really know what the shift is, but like just constantly paying attention. What do I need to change next? Things still aren't quite right. I mean, tonight he ate dinner and he started at like 112 was his number, and he was steady at 112, and I fed him dinner, and then a couple hours later he was like 79. To me, even though that's still in range, his dinner ratio needs to be fixed. That's still not quite right. Like I'm still analyzing the data on that. It still brought him down more than I want it to. His pump still had to suspend basal. That's not good enough for me. Like I'm constantly just analyzing, probably to a fault, honestly. Pre-diagnosis me would be like, girl, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. You go take a bath or something.
Go
touch some grass.
Yeah, literally. Take a break, like take a breather.
Just don't turn off your brain for a minute.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's also something, like, don't get me wrong. Like I am very much like my brain is very busy. It's constantly going, but like diabetes just amplifies that so much.
Oh, I agree.
And it truly, like, I am never able to turn my brain completely off anymore.
Yeah.
There ain't a shot in hell.
I'm not like you in that way. My brain is not just naturally always going in the way that yours is. When Wells was diagnosed, I had just started getting to a place where I was able to turn my brain off. I had really little kids for a really long time. My oldest 3 kids, like when my third was born, I almost had 3 under 3. And then Wells was born 3.5 years after my third. And so like when Wells was born, my oldest was 7. I had a lot of kids just kind of back to back to back. And when Wells was diagnosed, he had just turned 3. And so I feel like I was just getting to the point where I didn't have a baby. I didn't have a little toddler. Like I had a somewhat, not self-sufficient, but like doing some things, eating normal meals, like not sitting in a high chair, not in an infant booster seat in the car. Yeah. And I feel like I was just getting to the point where I could kind of turn my brain off a little bit. We were sleeping through the night every night, finally, after years and years of not. He was like a horrible baby too. It's just like, It was like,
Wells.
thank God he's finally sleeping. Well, joke's on you, bitch, because you ain't never sleeping again.
Hold my beer.
But I do feel like I was just kind of like starting to get to a place where I was turning my brain off and enjoying it. And unfortunately, me no get that.
No.
Anymore. Nuns
brains.
Nuns brains.
Nuns brains. Well, actually, all's brains, but nuns actual beneficial function of brains.
Exactly.
So when do you think the moment was that you realized your brain had been like rewired for diabetes math?
Ugh, I don't know. I think I realized over time how good at math I had gotten in my head, especially before Wells had a pump and I was doing mental math, calculating things just with MDI. I realized how much better at just like division and stuff I had gotten in my head. Like literally math has never been my strong suit. I'm not good at it. I really struggled with it in school.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah, but I had to get good at it for the sake of dosing him.
Yeah.
And so I think I realized slowly over time that that was happening. And I'm still like, even now that Wells is on a pump, I can do a lot of math in my head that I honestly couldn't do before he was diagnosed, just from practice. So I think that maybe would be my answer. But also I think of math with insulin very often, and like my ability to gauge situations, gauge food, play all these multiple factors in all at one time, if that makes sense, and like think about it in a numbers way. I don't know if that makes any sense. Do you know what I mean?
Does. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I feel like our ability to multitask and like be able to juggle like multiple things at once has also grown significantly.
Oh, yeah. I would agree. Yeah. And I think looking at things from multiple different angles in any given situation. Like, for example, I'm thinking of like, okay, Wells he needs to eat dinner, but we also have baseball tonight. So this is a frequent equation that I have to work through in my head of how I want to attack this, because Wells every Wednesday has baseball practice at 6:00. Okay. We have to leave our house at 5:45. So I need to be pre-bolusing him 10 minutes before he eats. I also need time to get him dressed for baseball. He spikes from adrenaline when we get him dressed for baseball, which means I need to give him a pre-bolus for getting dressed also. So I have to, I mean, this is legit. It's funny, but also it's not.
What's the weirdest thing you have to bolus your child for? Putting on clothes?
Putting on clothes. Literally.
I think you win. The weirdest one I have is probably video games, but like that makes more logical sense than like putting on clothes.
Yeah. He gets excited to go, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so I have to think in my head, like timing wise and insulin amount. Okay. I don't want to give him anything with fruit in it at dinner before baseball, because that's a much bigger insulin dose. I want to keep it like high protein, lower carb to go into activity. So I think through that. I think through what time he needs to eat. I think through how long I want to pre-bolus. And then when he's done eating, I have to think about how much time I want to wait between that dinner dose and pre-bolusing to get him dressed. Like there's so many different like angles that I'm having to think of it all. Not just he needs dinner tonight and I'm going to dose him for that dinner. It's not that simple.
No, I do love those nights though. We also struggle with diabetes, I guess, on sports nights as well. And our schedule is a little bit different because Pax's soccer starts sooner than Wells's baseball does. I'm not logically going to feed him dinner at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
So it's like I have to think through, okay, like you said, high protein, very low carb snack, because he cannot go into activity with a buttload of insulin on board.
Yeah.
But he also does need insulin on board because if he's had suspended basal or anything, he's going to shoot through the roof. So, lose-lose situation.
Yeah, double-edged sword, really.
It really is. So it's like we end up doing a small snack before practice, and then I don't end up feeding him dinner until like 8:30 at night on soccer nights. And I dread that, but that's realistically best case scenario for us.
Yeah. Yeah. What else are you supposed to do? Because he's at soccer.
Yeah. Just starve him. None's food for you tonight.
Speaking of food and dinner, do you feel like your relationship with food has changed because of constantly thinking about food in numbers?
100%. I think more so my relationship with the food that I choose to feed Paxton. Like food in general, not totally, like, I still feed myself girl dinners for almost every meal and, you know, sustenance at this point.
Yeah.
But like when I think about the foods that I am putting into his body and the foods that I'm having to dose for, I feel like I have probably developed a slight bit of an unhealthy relationship to some degree.
Yeah.
And, you know, they say, what is it? Acceptance is the first step. But not in just the fact of like, I don't want him to have this, or like, I'm going to restrict this, or I don't feel like bolusing for that. Do I have some days like that where I'm like, I just don't feel like dealing with this monster of a food? Yes, 100%. But I feel like it's so important to make sure that whatever relationship I have developed with food doesn't get passed on to him.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, we try so hard about, you know, making sure he gets these normal, quote unquote, kid experiences with food.
Yeah.
And, you know, hey, mom, I really wish we could have Culver's today. Okay, cool. I'll make it work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there are so many no's and there are so many laters that it's nice to be able to say yes once in a while, even if I'm the one that has to, like, take on that stress for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I just get fatigued thinking about food. And our situations are a little different because of Wells' CSID. And so Wells is very restricted on what he can eat, not because of type 1 diabetes, but because of his CSID. And honestly, just the two are just such a beast together. But I just get so fatigued thinking about food. Like in general, I even have a hard time feeding myself. My eating habits have gone in the garbage since Wells was diagnosed, especially with the CSID, because I'm so fatigued thinking about food all the time for him and what's safe for him to eat and what he can eat without it having consequences. And so I just like, I feel like that's how my relationship with food has changed. Like I find it fatiguing at this point to even be thinking about it.
What's a meal that used to completely throw you off that you've now mastered?
Oh gosh.
I just can't stop thinking about butter toast.
For you?
No, for you. Do you not remember when that used to be Wells's thing and you were so determined to nail down how to bolus for butter toast?
I don't remember that.
You don't?
No.
I'm not psycho, I promise.
I don't remember. I believe you.
Okay.
Was it before CSID stuff?
Yeah, it was before he was having all of the issues.
This is a tricky one because of his stuff, he doesn't eat a lot of like quote unquote tricky foods or like foods that used to throw me off necessarily. I think I'd probably maybe just say breakfast in general. I feel like most type 1 diabetics are the most insulin resistant at breakfast, and Wells is certainly no exception to that. And so even though Wells is eating like low carb breakfast most of the time, it's still really tricky to dose for. It's still really tricky. Like things he eats for breakfast that maybe later on in the day I can dose like net carbs or something for, I can't at breakfast. It just doesn't work that way. Yeah, obviously, like they are much more insulin resistant that time of day.
Yeah.
So it's taken me a long time to figure out like the right amount of insulin to give in the mornings for breakfast items. But I don't know. I can't think of really anything other than that. McDonald's, maybe?
I think ours would be Chick-fil-A. Like, for the most part, I have finally mastered Chick-fil-A.
It's going to screw you next time.
It is.
Just because you said that.
Well, it's fine. I've mastered Chick-fil-A if we don't go into it with suspended basil.
Yeah.
That's the kicker, because no matter how much I dose to make up for that suspended basil, it's never enough or it's way too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never in between.
I can never get Chick-fil-A right. We eat Chick-fil-A pretty regularly. I never get it right. Never. I have just given up. It's never the same. I don't love Chick-fil-A.
I don't fucks with Chick-fil-A.
I don't fucks with Chick-fil-A. McDonald's, we do like okay most of the time. Like decent enough that I would consider it like successful most of the time.
Well, I feel like it's strange too, because even just between like, okay, we could feed both the boys McDonald's the same meal, give like, let's just say like obviously the correct amount of insulin that they would need for that meal per their insulin needs.
Yeah.
And I feel like Wells almost always like spikes, but then comes back down on his own.
Yeah.
Paxton, if he spikes, he ain't coming back down. Like he is going to either spike and stay there, or he's just going to continue spiking.
Yeah.
Which is like
to
just
infinity.
like and beyond. Which is like just so wild to me. I think it's just so wild to think about still, like how different everybody is and like different patterns when they eat like the exact same meals.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, I feel like that's something that I've definitely had to learn over time, is how to recognize patterns, because I know most of the time, if Wells spikes from eating McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, whatever, I do not need to give additional insulin because he will come back down. Usually it's more of a like pre-bolus wasn't sufficiently long enough. He needs like 15 or 20 minute pre-bolus for food like that, like fried food that it just hits really quickly, or the insulin will eventually catch up to the food. And like, I don't. Anytime I've rage bolused because I saw him like double arrows up after fast food, I've regretted it almost always. But Paxton isn't the same.
Yeah.
It is interesting. You start to kind of pick up on these nuances of patterns to know what to do in situations that, you know, diabetes is not one size fits all. Like, these are two kids that are relatively close to the same age that have very different responses to not only food, but like activity even. I have to pre-bolus Wells to go to baseball. I have to give him almost half a unit of insulin, which is a lot for him, really.
Yeah.
He's getting, you know, just a little bit more than that for meals a lot of the times. And I have to give him that much just to not spike to 200 during baseball, whereas Paxton needs like no insulin on board going into activity.
Yeah. And that is definitely how it used to be last season. This season is a whole different monster.
Yeah.
And we are experiencing kind of similar issues to what you guys are.
Yeah.
But no matter how much insulin I give him, he still manages to spike.
Yeah.
To like 250.
Yep. That's how Wells is with baseball. Like, it is absurd to give him. I usually do 0.4 units of insulin just for adrenaline. I could probably do more than that. Like, realistically, I could probably do half a unit. He doesn't even get that much for a blood sugar correction.
Yeah.
Like, he gets like 0.2, 0.25, 0.3 for blood sugar corrections, like of high blood sugar. So it's wild to give him that much insulin plus activity, and he doesn't even go low after.
No.
He doesn't ever go low. He'll go higher after it ends.
Just never stops.
In fact, yeah. This last baseball practice, I was like, oh yeah, I nailed this one. He stayed at like 130. He started at like 100. He stayed at 130 pretty much the whole practice. And then the practice ended and he went to 160, which granted in the grand scheme is not that bad. Like, that was our best round yet. Like, the other times he has spiked to 200 or over 200 all the other times. So relatively speaking, I'm not mad at it necessarily. But yeah, he doesn't even go low after the practice ends. He just stays there, goes higher. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Do you feel like there have been any blood sugar patterns of Paxton's that took you a long time to finally figure out?
I'm going to go with video games. And the fact that he, most of the time, not all the time, of course, because that would be too simple.
That would be too easy.
That he will spike from, you know, what I'm assuming is adrenaline and excitement while playing video games. I remember we just this year started letting Paxton play like Fortnite and Minecraft and stuff like that. And he was like going randomly high all the time, like while he was playing these video games. And like, I guess at first I kind of just like attributed it to like either like, oh, suspended basal, or like I just screwed up this lunch bolus, or, you know what I mean, this meal bolus, and I should have extended and I didn't, or that type of thing. And I was like so easily attributing it to other factors until one day I don't know what dawned on me. One specific day he like just started randomly spiking, and he was upstairs in my husband's office playing the PS5. I don't know if he was playing Fortnite or not, but regardless, he was just all of a sudden spiking through the roof. And I went upstairs and I was like looking at him, and like his face was like bright beet red. Like, you could tell that he was like frustrated at the game, but he was like anxious and like excited. And I was like, oh shit, I wonder if that's what this has been the entire time. And so the next time he started playing video games, I sat and I watched his graph for probably like 20 to 30 minutes. And as soon as I saw that uptick, I bolused him for it, and he ended up staying in range the entire time he played video games. Didn't ever go low.
Oh my gosh.
So that one is one that definitely took me a while to figure out, and is also kind of insane that that's even something we have to do.
Yeah, I think that was me with baseball, and I know I've talked about that a bunch, but he played last season too. And last season, his practices and games were on Saturday mornings. And so we'd go straight from breakfast to practice or games. And with breakfast, it's very easy to blame a high blood sugar on whatever it is that he ate.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, he's going to 200. Like, I didn't dose enough for breakfast. I didn't extend enough for breakfast. I didn't whatever, you know, still trying to figure out breakfast dosing. it didn't really click for me until this season, because he's having afternoon and evening practices and games, that's what it's baseball.
Yeah.
Like, I never pre-bolused or gave any insulin for baseball last season, because I was not, other than just like pump suggested corrections, I was not connecting the dots because of the time of day. Like, it was just like too conveniently right after breakfast. My brain was like, oh yeah, it's that for sure.
Yeah. Breakfast be staying your scapegoat.
Yeah. And like,
I can't blame you, because like I would do the same thing.
Yeah, it's very easy for breakfast to become the scapegoat, I think, in that situation, because like breakfast it's not uncommon for any diabetic to spike after breakfast.
Breakfast
is
a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
No matter what you feed. You could feed a high carb meal that's completely covered with the appropriate amount of insulin with the appropriate amount of insulin, and they could go high or low. Or you could do literally a low to no carb breakfast, still give a little bit of insulin for it to cover the protein and the fat, and you don't know what's going to happen. Like, there is no tried and true winning way to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was doing. I was giving like low carb, high protein breakfast, anticipating the fact that he was going into activity, and I felt like I just wasn't getting that right, and that's what was causing the high blood sugar. But this season started out and he was having practices at, I think his practices were at 4, from 4 to 5, or from 5 to 6. Either way, I wasn't even feeding him a meal before we went for those practices, those like weekend afternoon practices. And he was still spiking to like 250. And I'm like, oh, the common denominator here is baseball. Like, that's got to be it. But it took me like 2 seasons of baseball to figure that out.
Yeah. And don't worry, next season will be something completely different too.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt. Or like, my really big fear is that now I'm dosing insulin for, he's not eating something. It's not like I'm like dosing him for a snack that I can guarantee he's going to eat those carbs. I'm giving him a hefty amount of insulin, not knowing whether or not he's going to spike from adrenaline. Like, I'm assuming he is, because that's the pattern, but who knows when that could potentially change. And now I've given him all this insulin for potentially like not needing it if he doesn't have that adrenaline spike. It's so scary.
Yeah, that's the same way I felt about the whole video game thing. I'm like, how ridiculous is it that I'm going to sit here and give my kid insulin for this? And then what happens if today he doesn't get excited enough about video games, and then he plummets into the 40s or 30s because I've given him this giant, like, I'm talking like I used to have to give him like almost a unit.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah. Have you ever had to explain a pattern to a doctor who didn't initially see it?
Yeah, frequently. The main thing that pops into mind is, well, CSID diagnosis. I remember the diabetic educators and the doctors just kept changing ratios, kept changing settings with Wells when we were having all these really bizarre patterns, these lows and then these highs later on, and they were just tweaking things and nothing was really working consistently, because obviously he had this whole other condition that we didn't know about. When I flipped that switch in my brain to data analyst, and I started paying attention to these bizarre severe lows in the 40s and then going high hours later, I actually thought he had celiac disease. Like, I thought gluten was the underlying factor. I thought that was the pattern I was picking up on. It didn't end up being that. I didn't know what CSID was at the time at all to even be able to be like, oh yeah, maybe that's what it is. But I remember telling his endocrinologist at an appointment, I think that the common denominator here is that it's happening when he eats gluten. And, you know, that led us down the path of seeing a GI and having an endoscopy done and ultimately finding out that he had CSID. But that wasn't something that his doctors were even thinking about. They weren't thinking about what he was eating. They were just looking at this big picture of his data, you know, on his Dexcom graph and his pump at the time, the Omnipod 5, and making changes that they felt like they were seeing in the patterns, but they couldn't get the full picture because they weren't living with him and seeing what he was eating and things of that nature, like I could, because I was. Do you feel like constantly like analyzing data and analyzing patterns has changed the way you observe Paxton?
I think it definitely has. And I also want to like recognize the fact that analyzing patterns and data, I feel, is even more important for younger kids like ours who aren't very aware of their own bodies and what is going on in their bodies.
Yeah.
Like, there's something to be said for like, yes, it is important to learn how to read your child and like learn the, you know what I mean, the small little cues and like hints that they give off. But also, like, I feel like I am much more dependent at this point on the pattern recognition, but like I don't think like right now, I don't know about you, but like I don't think I could recognize a low before the CGM reads it. Like he is still very, very hypo unaware.
Yep.
Like, so I think more so like looking at a Dexcom graph is honestly my best bet right now.
Yeah, I think I don't even know that I would just leave it as hypo unaware. I think I would say asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Like
for the most part.
Not just is Wells not feeling or not recognizing the symptoms. He's not having them.
Yeah.
He's not having symptoms. There's been like a small handful of times where he's showing signs that maybe he's low. He's like extra whiny, or, you know, he'll tell me like he can't walk. These are like severe low situations.
Yeah.
And they're few and far between, honestly. Like that is not a regular occurrence. He is truly not feeling symptoms.
Yeah. I think the closest I could get to like being able to like read packs would be like with a high.
Yeah.
Because he does get cranky
Wells
when he's
too.
high. And it's not necessarily like, don't get me wrong, like he's cranky a lot of the time, but like it's more so of the fact of like, oh, hey, he's cranky. Let me go down the list here and figure out why. And my first check is always what his blood sugar is at.
Yeah. Wells will also tell me he has a headache with high blood sugar. He seems to feel his highs more than his lows. I don't know if it's because we keep a tighter range and he's not high very often.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I don't know. That's my guess. But yeah, I feel like I see high symptoms in him more than I do low. He can be 30 and feel nothing.
And just want to jump on the trampoline.
Yeah. He's like, let me go play. I'm good.
Yeah, I think the highs are definitely more like prevalent and observable for us as well. I wonder why that is.
I don't know. Probably because we keep a little bit of a tighter range.
Yeah, that would make sense. Have you ever just known something was wrong and been right?
Honestly, I don't know that I have. Not without some kind of Dexcom clue.
Yeah.
In fact, honestly, the opposite. There have been times where I thought Dexcom was wrong and I was wrong and there was something wrong. Like one time Wells' Dexcom had been like relatively steady, and then suddenly he was asleep in bed, dropped, and it just said low. And I was like, oh, that's a compression low, like for sure. And I poked his finger and he was 30. And I was like, oh, okay. So I don't know that there's ever been a time where I just like knew something was wrong. Maybe the time, I've told the story before, that he had a sight failure when we were at a doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
And I was giving corrections, and things just like weren't, like he wasn't coming down. But it wasn't because of any way he was acting yet. It was just because of Dexcom. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Have you?
Personally, I think I'm in the same boat. Like, I think most of the time it's the opposite. And I think I'm so sure of something being wrong and actually I'm the thing that's wrong.
Yeah.
Which is so quite humbling.
Yeah.
We love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough with these little kids that are pretty much asymptomatic in all regards, in both directions for the most part. And I don't know. I do feel like the awareness of the potential of things being wrong has made me more hyper aware of how he's acting. Like I'm constantly on the lookout for him acting weird, things being weird. Are you feeling okay? Are you good? Are you okay? If he's extra whiny or acting extra tired, I'm like, are you all right? Are you all right? Like it does.
Yeah.
Like
it makes you second guess it.
Yeah, I am like a little bit more hyper vigilant about like how he's behaving, even though I know damn well like he's not gonna behave any kind of way, even if he is low or high or whatever. But it does make me like more on edge about his behavior and paying attention to how he's acting, even though I know realistically he doesn't have symptoms.
Yeah, but it's also like you have to almost decipher like what's normal 5-year-old behavior and what's actually possibly related to diabetes.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this is probably a good segue into like medical advocacy and like talking to doctors and making treatment plans. And I mean, obviously we've talked about insurance battles plenty, but like also teachers and caregivers and like having to speak up for your child essentially in like all these different settings where like a normal parent just sends their normal parent. People hate when I say that, but you know what I mean? Like a parent of a non-medical needs child where they just send them to school and, you know, whatever, have a good day, Jimmy, like whatever. And this is very different situation. You guys homeschool, but still you get the general concept, obviously.
Yeah.
So I guess for the sake of the fact that you guys homeschool, we'll talk about specifically like doctors, treatment plans, etc. When do you feel like the first time you spoke up or pushed back in a medical setting was? Do you feel like you've had any experiences like that?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the story that I told about our insurance battle, like right after he was diagnosed.
Yeah.
Where they tried to tell us that my 3-year-old didn't need an insulin pen designed for children. But like, I'm trying to think of like a specific instance, like in a legit like clinical setting. But honestly, like, I mean, for the first little bit, we, you know, like you were talking about earlier, like we were very naive. We were very like, oh, we don't touch the settings. Like that's only for the doctors.
Yeah.
And like things like the rule of 15 and, you know, insulin stacking and all of that stuff. Like I think that all was like very prevalent in my mind.
Yeah.
Honestly, like there probably have been like little things here and there that I've had to not necessarily like push back on, but at least just like speak up for and just be like, hey, no, like I don't think that's actually the right plan, or I think this might work better. Like we are very blessed that like we love our endo team and they have always been so supportive in, you know, our management and all of that stuff. I think like maybe the thing that comes to mind is actually something that's been a bit more recently where we were looking into DIY looping.
Yeah.
And I had reached out to Pax's endo to ask her if it would be possible to get Omnipod dashes prescribed, even though we're still under warranty for the Mobi. I wanted to make sure that they were going through pharmacy instead of durable medical equipment. Couldn't think of it. Couldn't think. Yeah, DME. Couldn't think of the E. And, you know, she basically reached back out and was like, hey, you know, like I can't recommend this for such a young child. Like, you know, basically just like that. And I kind of had to be like, oh, hey, you know, like respectfully, I can appreciate your perspective, but like looking into all of this research that I've done, it's like I really think that this is like the next step for us and like what's going to help get us to our goal and kind of help solve some of the problems that we're having on the Mobi. And don't get me wrong, we love the Mobi. Like it is amazing. Game changer, especially coming off the Omnipod 5. It has been miraculous for our management, but there's still cons to it. Like I would love a lower target range, which you can do on DIY looping. And so like realistically, I probably wouldn't use DIY loop to the extent that some people use it for. I would use it exactly the same way as the Mobi, but just set a lower target range. Yeah. But anyways, that was kind of like the first time where I kind of had to like disagree with a medical professional, and me and my non-confrontational ass was like having a panic attack and like the sweats when I was sending back this MyChart message, because I'm like, I know I need to advocate for my kid and I know that this is possibly what's best and at least it's worth a shot to see if it helps our problems. But like, I don't know, like it's just like I know I have to do it and I'll get it done. Like I'll get her done. Yeah. But like it just sucks to have to do.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that I've really had to push back on. We've gotten a couple of comments from Wells' endocrinologist about him not eating enough carbs, and I have to be like, hey, partner, he can't digest them.
So fun fact,
unless you want him to spend half of his time.
He's going to be 50% low.
He's going to be 50% low.
And then also 50% high.
Yeah. So we did have to definitely have like conversations about that where I was like, hey, like I get what you're saying, but he has this whole other condition that I'm not quite sure she really understands. And it's tough because his GI doesn't really understand type 1 diabetes. And so like between the two, I feel like I do a lot of my own management of both conditions because they don't really understand each other.
It's almost like you're trying to play messenger between the two. And it's like, oh, well, GI said this. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't really understand this, but go tell them that I said this about diabetes. And the GI's like, well, I don't understand that, but like tell them that you can't do this. And it's like you kind of like are bouncing back and forth almost.
Yeah, we just stopped seeing the GI because they really didn't understand why I cared so much about the CSID stuff. They were like, it may be something, it may not be something, whatever. And I'm like, well, no, it definitely is. Like he has the symptoms and it's reflecting in his diabetes, and they weren't understanding how that would be possible. Like it was they just didn't understand, and that's fine. It's not their area of specialty, so I get that. But same for his endo, she doesn't really understand that side of things, and so I've had to be like, hey, no, like you just have to trust me on this. Like I would not be intentionally depriving him of carbs. And I don't. He eats carbs, just for the record.
But also, like, I don't think people realize, like, if you could feed him carbs, your life would be so much easier. Like, a plethora of carbs. Like, normal, quote-unquote, amount of carbs that a child should be consuming.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, just when we were in Disney back in November and we were all getting the boys something from the park, and I got him a cup of pineapple, like pre-cut pineapple from Epcot, and it was like the one thing I could find there that I felt like, okay, this is like my best shot at letting him eat something here.
Yeah.
I let him have less than half the cup of pineapple, and it ruined our night.
Yeah.
We had to leave the park early.
Yeah, because he didn't feel good.
He didn't feel good. His blood sugar had already been like crap. I think that was the night he went super high, probably because he digested it late. Like that's typically what happens. He goes low and then he goes high later on. But he felt horrible. His stomach was killing him. And it's like, I'm not doing this. I wish I didn't have to.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I didn't have to do this. This is just the reality, though. This is how, what his body can handle and what it can't handle. But yeah, I think that would be one of my things that they just, not necessarily me pushing back, but they don't quite understand. And I have to stand up for him.
It's like you have to do a little bit of extra advocating on top of our normal advocating.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, what advice do you think you would give to a newly diagnosed parent about advocating for their child?
I think I would say nobody knows your child better than you do.
Agreed.
No doctor, no professional, no pediatrician, no endocrinologist, no GI. Nobody knows your child better than you. And if you feel like your gut, your instinct, your, whatever you want to call it, your pattern recognition, your data analyst inside of you is screaming that something is not right or something could be better, advocate for it. Because at the end of the day, even an endocrinologist that sees your child every 3 months, which is more frequently than any other doctor probably, that endocrinologist is still only seeing your child maybe 30 minutes every 3 months and looking at your child's data for maybe 30 minutes every 3 months. That doesn't even hold a candle to the amount of knowledge and understanding of your child that you hold and have. So I think that would be my advice. Like, if you feel like you need to stand up and say, hey, this isn't right, this needs to be changed, we need to do something different, or I don't agree with your opinion, that is so valid, and you should really lean into that and trust that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was going to say kind of along the same lines, but also like you said, like they're sitting, these endocrinologists are sitting in an office and looking at a Dexcom clarity report for anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes. And they're looking at the graphs.
Yeah.
They don't know what went into the actual life happenings during those graphs. They're just looking at, oh, hey, he went high after lunch, or he went low after dinner, or he's, repeatedly dipping low overnight. And it's like, I can respect looking at just like the cold hard facts. Yeah. But there's got to be some story behind it, and unfortunately they will never be able to gain enough of that story to like put everything together and kind of get the entire picture.
Yeah, there's a life happening behind the graph.
Yes.
Theoretically, Wells' endocrinologist could look at his Dexcom graph from every Wednesday, see that I dose his dinner, and see that that's immediately followed by a high of 250.
Yeah.
You know what she would recommend? Strengthening his dinner ratio.
100%.
Because, of course, that's what it looks like on paper.
Yeah.
But it's not that. And I know that because I know every Wednesday night he's going to baseball, and I know that his dinner ratio works every other night of the week. And it is simply the fact that he is, excited about going to baseball, but she wouldn't see that from the other side of the screen.
No, you'd have to tell her that.
Exactly.
And then it would make sense, which right. And that's an easy one. You know what I mean? That's an easy pattern to explain.
Yes, exactly. But I think that's, that would be my advice is lean into your instinct, mom gut, pattern recognition, etc. Even in the face of a doctor that is, you can respect. Like, I love our endocrinologist, and I respect her and her opinions, and this is her profession. I know that she's good at what she does, but that doesn't mean that she knows Wells better than I do.
Yeah. If you're newly navigating this life, just know this. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. None of us did. These skills aren't things you learn overnight. They're built in the quiet, everyday moments you're already living through. You're doing more than you think, even on the days it doesn't feel like it. We're going to pause here, but in part 2, we're going to get into a whole different side of this, advocating for your child, navigating schools, and everything that comes with 504 plans. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed in those spaces, that conversation is for you.